It's been 20 years since planes struck the Twin Towers in New York, the Pentagon, and another crashed into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. This was one of the most defining and certainly darkest moments in our country's history. Among those covering the aftermath was Channel 3's Patricia Del Rio. She was a reporter for KTLA, which is actually in Los Angeles, but she's joining me now to talk about her own experience at Ground Zero. Patricia, thank you for coming, because I know this was a professional story for you and also a personal story.
It was, and I think I really see 9/11 through two different lenses. One is as the working journalist, having been there, but then another was having lost one of my dearest friends that day. So the background of it is that I am from New York. I grew up in New York, but I, at the time, was working for KTLA in Los Angeles. But I always went home every September for like Labor Day week. So I was home, and I had a very good friend, Eric, who I was meeting for lunch later that day. So I was there in New York, but not working.
You were just about to meet your friend for lunch on a regular day, which, as we know, that was a beautiful day. It started out as a beautiful day.
The sky was so blue, there wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was just that crisp, perfect September day.
Yeah,
you know?
I remember it well.
And you know, obviously, I wasn't down by the World Trade Center when everything happened, but obviously, because it happened at like 9 o'clock in the morning. And so the news broke that happened, and my news director in Los Angeles said to me, where are you? You know, and I said, well, I'm in New York. And he said, you know, this is going down. And in those days, you had to have a press pass, at least in Los Angeles, you did. And you had to be fingerprinted to get one and all that. And he said, do you have your press pass? And I said, I do. And he said, you have to get down there. So I went into this whole, you know, reporter mode. They linked me up with a crew in a satellite truck. And, you know, I'm just going, covering everything. And I was leaving messages for my friend and getting voicemail, you know, I'm not here, whatever. And saying, you know, these planes have gone into buildings and I'm now in this reporter mode and I'm sorry and we'll just figure out getting together another time. And I did not even connect that he would have died because he didn't work at the World Trade Center. As it later turned out, he had a breakfast meeting at Windows on the World.
Okay, so that's what happened. So at this point, you're down there, you're reporting like so many of us, just people looking for loved ones or talking about what was this? Was it, you know, as we learned, it was a terrorist attack. You were just in reporter mode.
It was. And, you know, the things that I remember so much about that was that nobody in the beginning sensed that all these people were dead.
Right.
You know, we were hearing that the hospitals were preparing and triaging, and we didn't think that there would be that many people who passed away. And so back then, cell phones weren't like they are now, where you have pictures on phones. People would carry photographs of loved ones in their wallets.
Yes.
So people were having photographs of their loved ones blown up on like photocopy paper at like a Kinko's or whatever they were doing. And they would come up to us reporters, like literally pull on my clothing and say, please help me. Maybe my son has amnesia, and maybe he lost his wallet, and maybe he just doesn't know who he is, and you know, and then there were these chain link fences, and people stapled these photographs of their loved ones, like missing persons. So could you help find them? And then they were just so covered, and eventually we realized these people are not missing.
Right.
They're gone.
I remember that frantic. Anyone with a camera, they were coming up to you, giving pictures. We also were sent to the hospital at first, and when we found out there were no survivors, we went to Ground Zero. And I remember that exact same thing of people saying, just put my loved one on TV.
Just put them on TV.
So as you're doing this, at this point, you're just, you're in work mode, and like so many journalists, you canceled plans because that's what happens in this business. So you're unaware that this could
I was unaware that that had happened, and you know, it was just there was this fine baby powder like gray dust that was everywhere. It smelled of jet fuel and like pulverized concrete, and it was just, it covered everywhere. And I just remember, especially as someone who grew up in New York, there was this hole in the skyline. It was just this big hole with this gray powder coming up, and it was so stunning to me. And I remember when I was doing one of my live reports, I teared up and my voice was cracking, and I was not crying, but almost crying. And afterwards, my news director, Jeff Wald, he said to me, I was like, I'm so sorry. You know, I had another hit to go afterwards, and I was like, I'm so sorry. And he said to me, he said, Patricia, it's okay, because this is humanity. This is what's happening, and you are expressing what the viewers at home are feeling. And he said, do not be afraid to show that. And he said, remember that you are the eyes and the ears to the world. You are bearing witness to history right now, and the people at home are seeing through you what's happening. And after that, I didn't kind of lose it on air again. I was there for, you know, almost 2 weeks after. And I compartmentalized, and I said, okay, you know, I'm eyes and ears to the world, and I have to get it together, and this is soul crushing to be around this, but I'm gonna do it. And even to this day, 20 years later, if I'm covering a very sad story or something, I always think back, you know, cry on the car ride home, cry later, get it together, do the story, and you can cry all the way home.
Right.
And
The journalist pause button that we've learned to use.
Do.
Yeah.
You go into that mode.
So we can all imagine what that was like for you during that day and the days after, but when did you realize that something had happened to your friend?
Well, the thing was, I was starting to get kind of mad at him, because I'm explaining to him on the voicemails that, you know, this is all going down, and, you know, like, why isn't he calling me back? And it wasn't until days and days and days later that a mutual friend of ours said to me, you know, Eric died. And I was like, what do you mean? How did, and he said, you know, he was at the breakfast meeting at the Windows on the World. And I was so obviously shaken, but in a way, I guess it was good that I didn't know, because I really needed to be on point for my reporting. And I think had I known, it would have crushed me. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have been able to. It was crushing enough to be trying to cover all that. But I think about him a lot over all these years, and you know, he was just the smartest person I've ever known. He taught me how to use the internet. He taught me how to buy my first stock. You know, he really could. He was 32. He could have been anything, and he had recently been married. He had a little baby. She's about 21 now. Wow. And you know, I kind of I stalk her a little bit on like her Instagram. She doesn't know me, and I just kind of check in to kind of see where she is and how she's doing. And she's so pretty and smart. You can tell by her posts, and she looks so much like him. And I think to myself, you know, well, of course she's pretty and smart and funny and fabulous. Why wouldn't she be? Eric was, and it makes sense. But I kind of look from afar, and I think it's better.
Well, and all of us, it's hard to believe that it's 20 years later, I think. But now you're a mother yourself. So what do you tell Nicole about that day?
Well, it's so funny that you say that, because I literally just taught her about 9/11 about 2 days ago.
How old is Nicole again?
She's 11.
11 now.
And some of her friends already know about it. I think maybe because I have such a connection to it, I've held off on telling her. But there's a lot of things showing up on TV now, like commercials showing anniversary stuff, you know. And she said to me, she said, "Mommy, what is that? What are they talking about?" And I told her the whole story, and I told her how I'd been there, and I told her about Eric, and I told her that I vowed to myself that if I had had a son, that I would have named him Eric. And I just explained, and then it kind of brought it full circle to, you know, the stuff that's going on in Afghanistan now. So she kind of got the whole start to finish lesson of why we're pulling out of Afghanistan until then. So it was a lot for her to take in, and she was a little emotional about it, but I figured she had to learn it at some point, and probably better to learn it from me. And
is there something you will do to mark the actual day?
Well, I'm actually anchoring the news that night, but I always, you know, over the years, I kind of mark it every day in the sense that I don't do this every single morning, but a lot of mornings. I wake up, and when I'm getting ready and starting my day, I say to myself, I think for whatever reason, I flash to those people, Eric and others, who were brushing their teeth, you know, shampooing their hair, getting ready for work, and like didn't know that that was going to be their last day. And sometimes I think about that, and I say to myself, what if this is your last day? You know, make this a great day, Patty. Make this the best day, because this could be your last day. That day was Eric's last day. That day was all those people's last day. And so it's weird how every now and again I kind of do that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
In a positive way.
In a positive way.
Don't we all wish we could start the morning like that? But interesting that it's how you've turned it into a routine.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing your story, Patricia.
Thank you for letting me share it.